Welcome to the IVF Abroad podcast for people who are struggling with infertility and trying to conceive, and who are facing more obstacles than options when it comes to having fertility testing or treatment in their home countries. Alongside other experts, I will share, educate and empower you on your journey and help you to learn more about going abroad for advanced fertility testing and treatments like IVF and egg donation. I'm Emma Haslam, your host, now mum of one, and the go-to expert in fertility treatment abroad. Since the birth of our son in 2018, I have made it my mission to make fertility treatment more informed, transparent, accessible, supported and affordable for more people. And I help people just like you to become unstuck, to find a best fit clinic that truly meets their needs, and to have fertility treatment on their terms and timescales so they can achieve their dreams of growing their families. And I'm here now to help you too. Be sure to check out the free resources in the show notes for more help after listening to today's episode. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Now today I want to talk about something that you might be considering, which is becoming a mum on your own, but making that decision and then actually trying to work out whether it's the right decision, what you need to do next. Where do you start with things like fertility treatment, donor conception? I imagine brings up a lot of questions for people. So I want to dig into that with somebody who knows a lot about this. So welcome to Mel from the Stork and I. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Mel is a solo mum to her daughter Daisy, and she now supports other women who are considering or pursuing solo motherhood through her coaching and community. And she also used donor sperm to create her family and had her own fertility treatment abroad in reverse, which we'll talk about later. So there's lots of things I'd like to chat to her about today. So before we get into everything, I wanted to start by asking you, Mel, if you can introduce yourself to my audience, tell them a little bit more about you and how you came to become a solo mum.
Yeah, sure. So I am Mel. I am 47 and I live in the northwest of England. I moved here to be closer to my parents, actually, with my 8-year-old. And when I was 29, I was in a long-term relationship and just assumed, as I had my entire life, that we would get married and have children together, and it was all sort of ticking along quite nicely, as expected. And then unexpectedly, from my side at least, that relationship broke down. We were actually engaged and planning our wedding. And so it broke down. And although I was obviously grieving the end of the relationship, one of the sort of things that I was in a bit of a panic about is this is a terrible timing. I'm about to turn 30 and all of my sort of plans of having children with somebody, I'm having to start again. And I thought, do you know what? I've still got time. I'm 29. I can still meet somebody and hopefully, continue down a similar path. However, at that point, I'd never tried internet dating. And so I started dating, and my goodness, anybody who is dating, I'm sure will resonate with the fact that it is not easy. And so I went on many, many first dates. I wish I'd written a book about it. I've forgotten half of them now, but I wish I'd at the time written a book. I went on so many first dates, but just couldn't meet anybody that that we clicked and that we wanted the same thing at the same time. And I had a couple of, sort of, can you call them relationships? I don't know. But they didn't want the same thing as me. They didn't want to settle down. They didn't want to get married. They didn't want kids at that point, at least. And so I started to panic, honestly. I was like, if I don't meet somebody soon, I might miss out on the chance to become a mum. And that was the one thing I just really, really knew, that whatever happened, I just didn't want to miss out on having children. And so I'd sort of thought about, well, if I don't meet anyone, I'll just do it on my own, as many of us sort of do. I'll just do it on my own. But I didn't really ever think that that is what would happen. I just always still assumed I would meet someone. So time sort of ticked on and on. And at some point I was like, I've really got to accept that I'm not meeting someone and need to make a decision about, do I do something on my own? And finally, I think I was 37 and I was like, "Do you know what? Even if I meet someone tomorrow, now then having to date them and it's going to sort of set me back." And I just thought, "Do you know what? I've got to take action here." And I rang a fertility clinic, and almost like the rest is history. And that just started the process off. But at that point, because that was, gosh, going on for 10 years ago now, I didn't know a single other person who had done it. So I think one of the reasons it was quite difficult to make that decision is because there was no blueprint. There was no, like, I couldn't look at what it looked like or how other people had done it or what. And I think that was what, first of all, letting go of the fairy tale idea was difficult. But secondly, just imagining what it might be like. But yeah, when I phoned the fertility clinic, that just started off the process really, and it all went from there.
I resonated with a lot of the things that you said there, Mel, particularly about internet dating. Because that can be, I mean, some people have great experiences, don't they? But that was wild for me, and I didn't actually meet my now husband until I was 31, and I came out of a serious relationship where we were planning children and things, and I thought he was like the one, and we were going to get married, and and then that relationship ended, and it wasn't my decision, and I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Also knew I wanted children, and that made me feel quite panicky. I feel like for whatever reason, when we get to things like 30, 40, these milestone ages, it really can feel quite hard, particularly when you're thinking about wanting a family. And I remember that kind of feeling and that worry about, well, what will I do if I don't meet someone? Now I did, but I was just nodding along thinking, yeah, I can completely see how difficult that must have been when it's something that you knew that you most definitely wanted. And good for you for not, because the thing is, anybody can end up in a relationship. We know that. Right person, hasn't it?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because it's hard to remember the reality back, but I'd sort of love to sit here and say, I absolutely was just waiting for the right person to come along. In all honesty, I so badly wanted to do it with a partner that I do think I would have chosen someone who wasn't the right person for me. Luckily for me, it didn't feel like it at the time, but I had almost like 3 vaguely serious relationships. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that each one of them was categorically would have been a disaster. It wasn't the right person. We wouldn't have stayed together. And I knew that. I absolutely knew that. But I still would have done it because I so badly wanted to do it in a partnership. Now, luckily for me, they were wiser than me. Or maybe, I think they were just coming from a different place. They knew that it wouldn't work. And so I almost feel like it wasn't my decision. And if it had have been my decision, I think I would have made some foolish choices with some of the people I was dating. Now, you're right. There would have been plenty of other people that if I'd have wanted to, if I'd have really wanted to, then I could have been in a relationship with. But I do hear from a lot of people that they're in the same position that I was in, which is why I'm quite honest about it, because it's a bit embarrassing. I'd rather say, no, I've got really, high standards and I absolutely wouldn't compromise. No, I would have, and I would have been, but it's only with hindsight that you know that, in a terrible place. Let's say a much worse place, because I probably would have been co-parenting, possibly not had a good relationship with the person. And if you asked me, I knew that. I knew it, but I because I was so wedded to the idea of the fairy tale and doing it with somebody, I just would let all of that stuff go. because I wanted it so badly. And it's only now, being a parent, where I'm like, thank the Lord that those people knew better than me and knew that that wouldn't be a good idea. And I share that because I think a lot of people are in the same place. They're trying to pursue a relationship that they know is not good because they feel like they're running out of time. And, that's not necessarily the best idea.
Well, thank you for being so honest, because this is why it's great to bring somebody on who's been through this, because, I wouldn't necessarily have thought that. But when you say it, and I know you said it's embarrassing, and I'm not going to sit here and say, don't be embarrassed, because if you feel embarrassed, you feel embarrassed. But I listened to that, and actually that makes a lot of sense, because this, for lots of people, is a primal, innate need that you can't control or override, with the balance of the ticking clock as well. So I can totally see why that might been the case for you, and might be the case for lots of people listening to this. And I hope that by you sharing that helps them to feel less embarrassed, or whatever it is that they're feeling, but also to take into consideration what you've just said about, actually, thank goodness, because yes, you'd have been a parent, but then you wouldn't have stayed together. And we're not saying that children can't be happy in relationships where people do co-parent, but you're saying that the basis of things would not have been ideal. You'd have then been like co-parenting with that person for life, and that might not have looked good for you or for Daisy, and actually that wouldn't have been the right decision and right thing to do.
Yeah.
But I love how you're shining a spotlight on that, because if there are people listening who were thinking, oh, but do you know what, I'm doing that, you don't want anyone to ever feel judged, or to think that they're the only one and there's something wrong with them, or they're weird because that's what they're doing.
And it's almost not admitting it to yourself as well, because you sort of know deep down, if I was looking in on this, would I say this is the right relationship? But you almost like let lots of stuff go because you want it so badly. And I think one of the reasons for that is the fairy tale we all grew up with. And now I do see that changing a bit now, but for our generation, when we grew up, every single film that you watched, book that you read, the way the media writes about single women, like everything reinforced that it was success and happiness was going to come from meeting a partner and having a child together. There was nothing that showed any alternative. And so it's kind of no wonder it's so hard to let go of that idea, because it's so deeply embedded into us without us even realizing it. So I remember when I first did a podcast episode years and years ago, someone said, was it societal expectations? And I was like, no, it was just my own expectations, without having really thought it properly through, that yes, this has come from all of the messages that have gone in, that this is what happily ever after looks like. And of course, you're then comparing to a fairy tale, whereas that is not the reality. Even in a brilliant relationship, that's not the reality version. So I think it's hopefully, if you're in that situation and you're thinking, oh, we can figure it out, we could make it work, it's just being honest. Is am I just doing this because I want that so badly, or is this the right person for me? Because if it's not the right person, it's going to be so hard.
Yeah. And it's so interesting what you're saying there about the kind of fairy tale. I'm 46, so a similar age to you, Mel. And Nicholas Salmon and I were talking about this on the podcast, about kind of fat phobia and how ingrained that is in society. And when I was listening to you then, I was thinking, the fairy tales that we watch as children in movies, a prince and a princess, heterosexual white couples, and everybody's thin, and then if they're not thin, then they are called out for being fat. And how some of this stuff, you think, like you say, you answered that question, you're like, no, nothing to do with society. But actually, when you think about it, so many of these things are fed into us as messages from when we're born through life. And I think things are changing a little bit, as you said. But you're right, that is still very much ingrained in culture.
Yeah. And then if that's not happening for you, you automatically feel like you're failing.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, God, this is going to be such a disaster. Why am I the only person in the world who cannot meet a person to be with? Like, my life's going to be so, like, it's a failure, and I genuinely felt like that. But now I feel so different. It's like look, I'm not looking for a needle in a haystack. It's not this one, imaginary person that's going to come and save the day. And so, but I think a lot of people who can't find a suitable partner, who do want children, do feel like that. Gosh, why is it only me? And
Yeah.
it's not going to be as good if I don't meet somebody.
So for somebody who's listening to this and they're starting to think, maybe I'd like to explore having a baby on my own,
Yeah.
where should they actually start?
So I think there's some practical things that you can do. So as a starting point, it would be finding a fertility clinic and reaching out to them, getting some initial tests so they can do, some tests to say if you were to proceed with treatment, this is the treatment that we would recommend for you based on a number of criteria. And They can also talk to you about the process of choosing a sperm donor and how to do that, because it's different depending what clinic you use. So I think that would be from a practical point of view. I think I always recommend people to then do some research on it. So to find some people who have pursued this path to sort of look at how, their life looks and get a bit of an insight into it. Um, but also to do the research. Susan Gollenbach's written a book called We Are Family, and I always recommend that book because it's got really good research about the outcome of solo parent families. It's got research about all different families, and it's a really powerful book. Which, spoiler alert, the conclusion is it's not dependent on the number of parents, and it's not dependent on the gender of the parents. It's dependent on the parenting and the environment that you raise your child in. So, reading that, listening to the lived experience of donor conceived people who've been raised by solo parents, I think there's nothing more powerful than that. Hearing the stories of other people who have chosen this path and learning from them. And I think that the big thing for me is getting your support network in place. So, like I say, again, societally, we have strongly been conditioned to believe that we center our world around one romantic partner. And then if you've not got that partner, it can feel like there's a big loss. Whereas actually, you can create an amazing community of people around you who all bring different things, who are all there to support you. And you can create something a lot bigger than what one person would be able to give you. So starting to work on who might be in that support network. And I think I always say being single and being a solo parent are two separate things. However, I do think being confident about being single is the foundation that being a solo parent has to go on top of. And therefore, if that foundation is shaky, everything that happens as a solo parent can feel more challenging. So I would also say to people, do the work if you need to on being confident about being single and embracing single life and maximizing your situation and getting a good group of people around you. And there's a number of really good books that you can read. I always recommend Bella De Paolo's Singled Out, which sort of takes us into why it's hard to be single societally. And sometimes when you see the data and you realize, you're like, that's why I feel like this. And it's easier to understand then. And so, yeah, getting that foundation more solid, and then just reaching out and seeing if you can find anybody else who's in a similar situation. That's why I offer these group coaching courses, because the power of, sometimes at the beginning, everyone introduces themselves and people are like, well, that's all I needed to hear. There's 10 other really amazing women who are in the same situation as me, and that in itself has just made me feel better. And so, yeah, trying to meet other people who are in the same situation, I think, can be super helpful as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Will you send me the links for the books, because I can include them in the show notes? Thank you. So obviously you shared about how when you knew kind of you were ready enough to take the next step to do this by yourself. How do you think, if somebody listening to this is kind of trying to work out, am I ready, particularly if it maybe wasn't how they imagined they would do it, how would you say that they will know they're ready?
So this is such an interesting topic. I have got so many resources on making the decision to be a solo parent because it is not an easy decision. It's not an easy answer. So it sort of depends a little bit why you're not ready, because there might be a number of different reasons on it. And I would say that I've got a decision making workshop that again I could share the information on, which helps take you through all of the different elements to help you make a more confident decision. So I'm not a salesperson for solo parenthood. I'm not like, oh yeah, everyone should do it, because I don't think it is the right decision for everyone, but trying to give you the right information and the right tools to see if it's the right decision for you is what I'm trying to do. And so if it's a decision between should I wait to try to meet somebody or should I pursue this on my own, some of it is realistically, how long have you been trying to meet someone to date? How old are you? Like I'd been trying to meet someone for 7 years. I was 37. I honestly, the reason I made the decision was what is going to change in the next 1, 2, 3 years? Like maybe I meet somebody, but like I don't want to wait and be any older to have children. So some of it might just be, are you, are you trying to meet someone? And if you are, what action are you taking to meet someone? Because interestingly, with my coaching clients, they're like, I might just give it another 6 months. And I'm saying, but you're having coaching on solo parenthood. Have you seen a dating coach? Are you dating? Are you like, what action are you taking to meet someone? Because if you're waiting to meet someone, actually put the effort into then try to meet somebody. If you don't feel ready for more for like emotional reasons, then there's a lot of things you can do around letting go of the way you thought you would become a parent and embracing a different version that's equally positive. And there's some exercises you can go through to try to embrace that new one. And then sometimes there's some reasons like, have I got the right job? Am I financially ready? Have I got the right support network around me? And it's almost just like going through all of those, saying what needs to be in place to allow me to be able to make the decision that this is the right path for me. Or have I already made the decision, but it's more of a timing thing that I need these certain things in place. Um, Sometimes I do see people putting barriers in place, saying, and it's like, but you need to be more specific. I need to save more money. Well, how much money do you need to save? How long is that going to take to save? To just get a really specific, then I'll be able to do it. Because what I do see for people is this endless indecision. And the problem with that is you're not able to live either life. You're not able to really establish a life without children or to start a life of trying on the path to have children. And so sometimes you can feel a little bit in limbo. And so that's why making a decision one way or the other can feel really positive in that situation.
I think you just touched on loads of important points, but the limbo bit I talk about all the time. This is not about trying to persuade anybody to do anything.
No.
It's about holding yourself to account sometimes, even though it's hard.
Yeah.
And having those practical tools and information to then work out which is it. Am I going to pursue this or am I not? Because actually living in indecision and limbo is, I think, from my own personal experience and from speaking to clients, is the worst bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you have decided either way what you're doing and then you start a plan in that direction or you move on with your life in that direction, and I'm not saying it's easier, but limbo is a horrible place to be. And it's stealing your time, it's stealing your life. Because so many of us it just takes over. There's not a lot of people that I speak to where it hasn't taken over, to some degree. And I think it's like, even not thinking about fertility and stuff, when you've got a big decision to make, the worst bit is making the decision. Once you've made the decision and you know what you're dealing with and you can formulate a plan or go off in a different direction, even if that direction is different to what you thought it was going to be, I do think that feels lighter.
100%. And I think what people always say to me is, I'm worried I'll have regrets. And I think in some ways that's in our hands a little bit. So whatever decision you make, then make it the right decision. So I then see people who are like, years later, oh, unhappy. And I think if I would have had a child, it would have been better. But you're not necessarily unhappy because you've not got a child. You didn't then maximize your situation. So you might be unhappy with where you live or your job so it's whichever decision you make, it's then putting all your energy into making that the right decision and maximizing whichever path you want to take. Because I think the time that we have regrets is if we're not happy, and then it's very easy to look back and think, well, if I'd have made a different decision, it would have been better. But both paths will have loss and grief of something and will have joy. It will just be different. And it's just remembering that there isn't a right or wrong path, and there isn't one path that will bring you only joy and one path that will bring you only hardship. There's both. It's just which experience do it works best for you. So yeah, no, totally agree. Trying to get to the point of making that decision you're like, oh, finally I've made it. Makes you feel lighter.
Yeah, it does. And you're going to feel scared whichever decision you make. Like with any big decision in life, it feels scary and it can feel, not right. And you can and sometimes you never feel ready. But if you've done the practical work and you've worked through what that looks like, then, whichever path you pick, it's probably not going to feel 100% necessarily. But, it doesn't mean to say it's wrong. It's just because it's new and big and scary either way, isn't it?
And I think that you just hit the nail on the head there, that most people say that they're waiting for a time when they feel 100% ready. But in any circumstance, so many people never feel 100% ready because it's not something you've ever done before. It's not something you can predict. Do you know what I mean? There's such a level of unknown that I think it's being reassured that you're not on your own if you don't feel 100% confident already. There's an element of having to decide with the information that you've got, not waiting for a time when some people are, and that's where you're lucky in a way if you're like, no, this is absolutely what I want to do. But there's many people who aren't, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's not like, it doesn't automatically mean, well, if you're not 100% sure, then you don't do it. That I think that's an important thing to know.
Yeah, I do. You put a really good post on your Instagram account, I think it was last week, Mel, maybe this week, about language choice around solo motherhood by choice or by circumstance.
Yeah.
And you got lots of differing opinions, which is great. That's what you were asking for.
Yeah.
What do you think? Well, what do those terms mean to you, and why do you think language matters so much when it comes to this?
So I call myself a solo parent just because I think that's a more generic term that it doesn't need any further explanation in a sense. And I share openly my story. So I'll say, I've got my daughter's donor conceived. I chose to have her as a solo parent. But I think that for me, there's two different things. There's single and solo. And for me, single is your relationship status. So I've not got a partner. And solo is how I've gone into parenting. Because actually, I could have a relation. I might not be single. Like, I could have a relationship. It's different. So I think solo talks about how you've gone into parenting, whereas single is if you're in a relationship or not, which can change. And then the by choice, that's just the term that's most commonly used is solo parent by choice or solo mum by choice. But a lot of my coaching clients were saying, I don't like the by choice because this wasn't my choice. I would have preferred to do it with a partner, but because I haven't got a partner, it's my only option if I want to become a parent. So you've got two camps of people who are like, but it is still a choice. But then people don't feel comfortable saying, I chose to do this. They're actually saying, yes, I made the decision to do it, but it wasn't my first choice. Now, for me personally, I have not got massively strong opinions, but I know that lots of the community feel strongly about it. So that's why I had said one term you could use is solo parents chosen through circumstance, because the circumstances were I didn't have a partner, which is why I then chose to become a solo parent. There are people whose it's their first choice. They don't want to do this with a partner. So, but I think allowing everybody to utilize the language that works best for them, um, you know, there's an element of almost wanting to claim the word solo and have it only for this, which I don't think is realistic. But yeah, just allowing people to choose what language works best for them, and understanding that there's a lot of emotions behind languages, and just being aware of that, I think is useful.
Yeah, I thought it was a really, really good post. And I think it's great as well from an education point of view for people not in that situation. So we're always learning and, not living in our own ignorance, even if accidentally, our
Yeah.
own, circumstances. I think it's a good point to raise. And I suppose it's asking people how they like to, would
Yeah.
like you to. I mean, people will refer to you as Mel, but if they were talking about your situation or whatever, how you like people to describe it,
Yeah. And
Sometimes it's just asking people what they want.
the big controversy is when people are trying to also almost empathize with you, to say, oh, I know how you feel solo parenting because I was solo parenting this weekend, or I've solo parented for a week. And my view on this is, it's not a competition. So if you're used to parenting in a partnership and your partner goes away and you have to parent without them, I don't doubt that that's really hard. But it's the comparison to say that that would be then the same, because obviously the partner comes back, hopefully. um, and you've got their financial input, their emotional input, their all of that stuff. So it's the comparison bit that's hard, when people feel like they have a glimpse of what you must experience for that small amount of time is not a great comparison to make.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I mentioned at the beginning, you had your own fertility treatment abroad,
Yeah.
but you kind of did it the other way around, didn't
Yeah.
you? So do you want to explain to people sort of why you made that decision, where you were,
Yeah.
and kind of, what you want to share about that?
Yeah. So basically, I lived in Budapest because I was working out there, and had been there for 2 years. And was when I was making the decision, thinking, gosh, I'm going to keep gallivanting around the world, and not meeting anybody, should I proceed with this? And so it was when I was in Budapest that I decided to go for it. But at that time, and I think it's changed. Maybe I'm not 100% sure. In Hungary, you couldn't have fertility treatment as a solo mum on your own. They would actually allow you to have the treatment. I think it was something you couldn't buy sperm for use without a partner. And so, ironically, I was in a place where I could get much more affordable fertility treatment, but wasn't able to, because I was doing it on my own. So I had to travel abroad back to the UK for fertility treatment. So I've got the experience of having fertility treatment in a different country to which you're living, and so like the coordinating
Mm.
the treatment, the flights, etc. My treatment was ultimately in the UK. So I had a consultation face to face in the UK. We agreed my treatment, and we agreed for me to do IVF because it was a bit easier to manage the timing of that, and plan it a bit more, so that I could plan my travel. And then, which I'm sure is very common, we I went to my I had private medical in Budapest, and was able to have some of the tests via that in Budapest. And then the clinic liaised with the surgery that I used in Budapest so that I didn't have to keep on going back. Now, that was a very interesting experience because I had to explain to a male Hungarian doctor that I was having fertility treatment on my own in the UK. And he was quite fine about it, but I think it was probably wasn't very common, put it that way. So, yeah, I think I went back for um, for the IVF treatment. And then what was really frustrating was that I overstimulated and so couldn't, because I was planning to have the transfer as well,
Mhm.
couldn't have the transfer. So then had to fly back and then back again. And luckily, the travel between Manchester and Budapest is very easy, and there's low, at that time at least, there was low cost carriers, so it wasn't too bad. So went back for the second transfer, and then that resulted in Daisy being born.
Oh, so lovely. And it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there are still, I think Budapest is still the same, but I know
Really?
there are still plenty of countries out there where you cannot do this legally
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
solo
yeah.
person, which is, I
Well,
mean,
there's
it's just
some
ludicrous.
countries as well which you really wouldn't believe. Like, there's some countries which is more understandable, but I'm trying. Did I read it that Switzerland's one of them? France was, but I think they've now changed it. But
There's quite a few, and you would think in this day and age, the same if people are not in a heterosexual relationship. There's
yeah,
countries that, you know, I mean,
yeah,
it's insane, but it's not down to the fertility clinic, it's down to
no,
the laws in that country,
yeah,
and that's where you need to do your research. And it's really
yeah,
unfortunate for you, Mel, because like you quite rightly said,
yeah,
you could have had much cheaper
yeah,
fertility treatment and on your doorstep.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I suppose the fact that you're from the UK and it's not a long flight, you know, and
No,
the fact
and you
you
had
have phones and stuff
accommodation, so
like that,
I didn't have to then pay for accommodation. So,
yeah,
yeah, that was why I made that decision. Otherwise, I probably could have gone to a neighbouring place and done it
and
there.
done
But
it.
I thought if I'm flying anyway, I may as well just fly back
Fly
to
home,
where
yeah.
my family is. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest fears that you hear from women considering solo motherhood? And do those fears change once they've actually made the decision?
Yeah. So quite different types of fears. So one I would say is like loneliness and I'm going to be unhappy. Like it's a second best option and I'll never feel as good as I would if I was doing this with a partner. I think that's one of the big ones. And I think that can completely change if you surround yourself by amazing people, an amazing support network. If you find your solo mum tribe, other people who I do a course where people who are pregnant at the same time get together and then they meet the people who are in the same situation and they've got them in their corner and yeah, so I think often that really changes. There are, of course, also people who do feel quite isolated and are still holding on to the idea that this would be easier in a partnership. And so, but I think for many, they don't feel that when they get into it. I think another big fear is how am I going to cope financially? So just in life in general, it is difficult at the moment for everyone. It's particularly difficult if you're single because you've not got a second income to help with all the bills which are constantly rising, and then putting in having a child on top of that you don't really know how much it's going to cost. So everyone says, how much does it cost? How much money do I need? And of course, it's an impossible question to answer because it's completely different for everyone depending on a whole range of circumstances. But the fear of being able to cope financially. And for many, it is hard. It's really hard. And sometimes that comparison of seeing other people maybe on a holiday abroad or doing stuff and you're thinking, I can't afford to do any of that. And will my child miss out because I can't do any of that? And that's where I share a lot of stuff that you can do that doesn't cost a lot of money. And actually, when I asked my daughter her favorite part of our holiday, it's like making a den. And so there's so many things that you can do. We went to the beach every day, made dens, had picnics, like lots of things that don't cost money. But that can be a fear and a reality that it's hard. It's hard with one income for sure. That's the case. And then I think the other fear is this fair to my child? Will my child be impacted by not having a father in their lives, not knowing who the donor is? Potentially, they may be able to find out when they're 18. And again, I point people to the research on that and to listening to the experts. I've got quite a few interviews with like perinatal psychologists who have got experience of this, and how it impacts the child. And again, like the advice is to talk to them about it, to have it as a topic that's able to be on the table whenever they want, and to try to get them feeling confident about it, and for us to work through our stuff that we're confident about it, so they don't get any of our stuff by accident as well. Um, and I think I spoke to a psychologist about this that really changed my mindset on it for the positive. She said, it's not your responsibility as a parent to make sure that your child never has any difficult feelings about stuff. It's your responsibility to help them work through it. And I thought, gosh, that's such a game changer. Because maybe my daughter will feel a certain way about it at different periods of her life. I'm sure there's lots of things she'll feel a certain way about. And I can't change that now. All I can do is be there to support her, to have conversations about it with her, and to create an amazing environment around her as much as in my power, so that she doesn't feel like she's missing out on stuff. And then to support her later on if she wants to try to find the donor or donor siblings. So I think that's a big fear of people's as well.
Yeah, I do. And I think it's brilliant what that psychologist said. Somebody once said that to me, we are not responsible for our children's happiness. And that felt really like, oh, because it feels like I am.
Yeah.
But actually, that's a really good point. We can't choose how or know or predict how somebody's going to feel. And as you quite rightly said, they're going to feel lots of things about lots of things. And it may not actually be about the thing you think it's going to be, i.e. the donor conception piece. It really might not be. Yeah. But I think being honest and having that open dialogue and them knowing that they can come and talk to you about it. And you said something really important, Mel, which is also working through our own stuff and our own feelings and thoughts. So we're not projecting any of that onto them.
Yeah.
Because we just don't know. But all children, donor conceived or not, will have challenges. Yeah. And all we can do is support them as much as we can, and create an environment that allows them to do that.
Yeah. I'm actually, I run a course, I'm running it in September on the confidence of having these conversations. And it starts with working through your own stuff. And then it goes on to like practical tips about how to bring it into conversation with our children. And it's really interesting because I shared on Instagram earlier this week a conversation that I'd had with my daughter, because I was saying, would you mind if I shared this? And she said, but why? Like, why do people care about it? And I said, because some people don't feel confident talking about this. And she said, but why? And that's almost like the point. She couldn't understand why it was even a conversation topic, because she's so used to talking about it and confident about it. However, I'm very aware that might change at any age, particularly teenager. I'm just here to support with whatever, however she feels at the time. But yeah, I support people who want a bit more confidence and practical tips, and to understand the research about how to have those conversations, because my daughter will say she's nervous that to not be in a solo parent family. So she wants to be in a solo parent family. And I was like, why? Why'd you say that? And she said, because I love hanging out with all the other solo parent families and I would never want that to stop. And I said, I mean, even if I met someone, that wouldn't stop. They're like part of our absolute community and we will still see them. But isn't it funny how she's worried about the opposite, because that's what she's so used to. And she feels like, she like said to me, my friends at school just have a mum and a dad. They don't get to do all of this stuff with the other solo mums. So it's just funny what different children's perspectives are, isn't it?
Definitely. And we can also project our fears onto the future. either through them or not through them. And actually that reality doesn't always happen. I bet you never
Yeah.
considered before that she might think like that.
No, exactly. And I think a sort of a practical example where that I say to people is I do hear some people saying, "I'm so sorry that you've not got a dad, or you've not got a dad in your life." And it's like, but if you're positioning it then as a problem and something that you need to apologize for, so that's how they will feel about it. And so yeah, that's what I think is useful to help people go through language. Well, we've talked about language is important, isn't it? Another post I shared recently was saying it's just me and my daughter. The just almost like minimizes it. And it's just little things like that to be aware of, to help support the communication.
And especially if we're trying to change things on a wider
Yeah,
level
yeah,
culturally.
yeah.
Is there anything that you wish that you'd have known, Mel, before you started your solo parenting journey?
I just wish I'd known how good it would be. I wish I'd known how happy and content I was gonna be, because I worried about it so much, and I wasted the point that you made, like, I wasn't living my life fully, and I could have just lived my life knowing that it would all be fine. Now it's very difficult to know that, it's the benefit of hindsight, isn't it? But my life is so peaceful and content. Don't get me wrong, it's also hard and challenging and chaotic and at times overwhelming and a lot. But it's also full of joy and peace. And I think that if I would have known that how much I would have enjoyed it, I wouldn't have spent nearly so long worrying about whether it was the right thing to do.
Oh, the wonderful gift of hindsight, isn't it?
I
It's
know.
so hard. It's so
Oh,
hard.
yeah.
Um, so if somebody's listened to this and they're thinking, okay, really considering solo motherhood and whether it might be right for them, what
Yeah.
is the one thing you would like to leave them with from this conversation to take away and think about?
I would say the most powerful thing is if you thought that you were going to do it in a different way, and this is like a different path for you, really work on letting go of how you thought you were going to do it and really embracing that new script. Get in the director's chair, write a different version, but make it amazing. And then embrace that and make that version happen for yourself.
I love that. Thank you. And before we finish, do you want to tell everybody where they can find you? Tell them a bit more about the Stork and I, how you support people. And send me all your links and I'll pop them in the show notes.
Perfect. So on Instagram, it's the Stork and I, but with underscores between the words. And I share like a bit more of this is what life as a solo parent is like. I try to be quite honest to show the highs and the lows because I don't want myself to portray a fairy tale version. I want to give like the reality version. But that's for people who are like, I wonder what it's like. Like, what is it really like being a solo parent? Because I didn't have that, and that's what I try to share on there. And also a few like reframing things of how to think of things differently. And then on the stalkandI.com, I do one-to-one coaching, but the main thing I do is group coaching courses. One for people considering it, one for people who are pregnant, and one for people who want more confidence in talking to others. And the power of the group ones is you get that community, you get a WhatsApp group, you get to meet those people and interact and hear their thoughts and ideas and stuff as well. And then I've got a membership community as well. So there is a monthly podcast calls that you can dial into. There's a community where you can meet people who live close by to you. And then loads and loads of materials on all the different elements of solo parenthood that you might want to understand a bit more on. So, you can find all of that at thestalkandI.com.
Thank you, Mel. Thanks for being here and thanks for being so honest. I think, you've really given a balanced viewpoint here, which is great because this is not about persuading anybody to do anything. This is about people getting informed information, hearing different people's journeys, points of views, perspectives. And, I think when people are really honest, I think that really helps people then see that if they're feeling certain things in particular, it doesn't make them weird or there's something wrong with them, that a lot of these things are very normal and lots of people feel them. And by talking about them, I think it just really helps.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
All right. Until next week, everybody, thanks for listening and I will see you soon. Bye. If you are facing more obstacles than options and want to learn more about how to overcome your fertility testing and treatment challenges in your home country so that you too can fast track to growing your family and on your terms, then check out my free training at yourivfabroad.co.uk/free masterclass. Don't forget to rate and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and so that I can reach and help more people. Thanks for listening.